you've got it already. There's no barrier to entry. You just download the Infinite Flight for free, and you've got it.
Chandler Tower, Cherokee 4121 Tango is at Chandler Air Service. We have Zulu, and we'd like a south departure, please.
What does it take to be an angel? Where does the sun go when it sleeps? Is every star that shines so brightly in the sky another promise I must keep? I know I should by now. It isn't written in the stars, just shadows, dreams, and light and dark.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Student Pilot Cast. I've got another OSH22 feature here. As you know, most SPC content is audio, but for most of these features from Oshkosh, we're going to be doing video and audio, as there's usually a pretty important visual element to what we're publishing. So like the others, this is being published in both my audio and my video feeds, so enjoy it any way you want to, any way that works for you. For this one, I caught up with Jay and Laura with Infinite Flight. Now, I haven't been keeping up with the sim world all that much. Yes, I do have Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I have some equipment to go with it, but I haven't really been keeping up with what's happening deeper than that in this space. So it was very interesting to me to have a chat with Laura and Jay about their mobile sim platform called Infinite Flight. The consumer sim question that always comes up came up here too, about being a tool or a game, so you get to hear their answers or their takes on that as well. This mobile sim is very accessible. It can be used on the go really easily. It has some pretty impressive features like ATC, for-flight integration, and some other stuff. And many people appear to be using it very successfully as both a training aid as well as an additional source of information and experience for someone that may be flying to unfamiliar places. And to have this available on multiple mobile devices wherever you are could prove really useful. In other words, it doesn't take a large desktop workstation with the latest GPU, lots of memory, and 20 pounds of yoke and rudder pedals and equipment that you have to use with it. That's something I can get behind. So in this one, we get to take a deeper look at Infinite Flight. Laura is the CEO and co-founder, and Jay is their digital marketing lead, and clearly an all-around enthusiast, despite it being a job for him. Enjoy. Welcome again to Oshkosh 2022, everyone. I'm pleased here to be with Infinite Flight here in the Sea Hangar, I believe we're in, right? And this is an interesting company, believe it or not. I've been in aviation since 2008. I've been a student pilot. In 2008, I've been flying. I had never heard of Infinite Flight until Jay reached out to me. So I want to find out about it. I did read your article, Jay, that you wrote about learning to fly with it. And of course, I downloaded it and did a little checking. It's very interesting. But I wanted to start out first by introducing you guys. You are Jay, and you're in marketing, right? And this is Laura, and you're the CEO and co-founder, correct?
That's right. That's correct.
All right, perfect. So tell me, either one of you, tell me a little bit about Infinite Flight.
Yeah, okay, sure. So Infinite Flight's a simulator, a mobile simulator for phones and tablets. It's available in the App Store for free and also on Google Play. We have multiplayer, dozens of aircraft. I think we have close to 1,000 aircraft and livery combinations at this point. And we're going to be competing with a seminar over there. And we have ATC on our multiplayer servers as well.
Yeah, I'm going to find out more about that later, but before we do that, I want to go to Laura and find out how did it all get started, and when did that happen?
So I started when I was a student in engineering school in 2004 in France. I was working on a video game with my friends as a school project, and I was tasked to work on the physics of objects. And there was one of the samples that I was working with, like a test thing to learn how to use the application. You could just play with it, and I realized, like, if I put forces around that object and base them on the angle of attack and airspeed, that would make a plane fly. So I figured, like, let's load a plane model, make like physical wings on it, and apply forces, and lo and behold, it worked. So this is how it all got started. And then it was a passion project for me. And then I met my co-founder Philippe in school, and then he moved to California. I joined him to work at NVIDIA. And then after a few years of playing with this experimental sim, I reached out to him like, hey, do you want to work with me on this, because we could make something out of this. And then the mobile part came because it was around like 2009-10 when the iPhone was starting to get like really popular. So we figured let's go on mobile, and we shipped on iPhone in 2012, and the first version was Windows Phone in 2011. So it's been 10 years now, more than 10 years.
Interesting. Started on Windows Phone. Yeah. That is really interesting. I was a big Windows Phone advocate back then.
It was a great platform.
I know what happened to that platform, but that is interesting. One thing I was going to ask is, I believe it is only iOS today. Do you have it on Android?
Android too, yeah. We shipped Android a year and a half later in 2013.
Feature for feature, the same?
Yeah, it's the same. The code, since it's in C#, so it's a .NET, infrastructure. Everything is the same, except maybe some, the stuff that we have to interface with the device. Obviously, like some of the inputs and the way we create the window and all that is different. But for the user, it's all the same.
Using the same model in the background, then?
Yeah, same physics, same. Everything is the same. Like when you use it, it behaves exactly the same way.
Excellent.
There's the odd subtlety even between using a phone and a tablet on iOS. Like you get haptic feedback on the phone, but it doesn't exist on the iPad, that kind of thing. But otherwise, there's no difference.
Thank you. So, like I said, I hadn't heard of it before. So one of my overreaching questions, especially talking to Jay briefly about how he used it as part of his training, is this a game or is this a tool?
When people ask me if it's a game, I say it's a serious game if they're in the gaming part, but we see it as a tool. Like it can be seen as both a game and a tool depending on how you use it. If you're a pilot and you want to discover, like if you're going to fly in a place that you're unfamiliar with, it's a great way to get a picture of what it's going to look like, especially if it's near like mountains or you have to cross a canyon or something that you're really not comfortable with. You can just go and get like a side picture, like, okay, this is how it looks like. Maybe like 1,500 over the ridge is a little too too low, and you can plan a little higher because you have the picture of what it looks like in this particular situation. So it can be used as a tool.
For me, it's a nice combo of everything. Like it's work now for me, but it's also fun, and it's also a tool. I use it to I'll give up Flight Chops a little plug. I was flying with Steve into Lock Haven, Pennsylvania, so he could pick up an airplane. And Lock Haven has a mountain on one side of the airport and rising terrain on the other side. So naturally, I fired up Infinite Flight and I flew what I thought would probably be our approach into Lock Haven and realized, I'm really not comfortable with, I can't be on that side. We're going to follow the river in, and then I'm really not comfortable with this, so I'm going to plan my approach pretty carefully as we come in there, and it was really beneficial in that way. It takes couch flying to another level, and even we have ForeFlight integration as well, so for pilots, if you're on the same Wi-Fi network, you can use ForeFlight to practice new features or whatever, and you can see the route in ForeFlight with your 3D view, but until you actually are sitting there flying it, it's just different, and it feels different. And Laura's had the same experience flying in mountains too.
Yeah, I did. Like when I was using this as an example often is I picked up an aircraft from Hood River in Oregon, and I had to ferry to San Francisco, to Palo Alto, and there was two routes, either like via Highway 1, so near the coast, or through like what would be the Central Valley, like the extension of the Central Valley. And I wanted to go like the straightest route. Well, I think about half an hour to an hour into the flight, flying an Infinite Flight, I realized the terrain was kind of high. And I had mountains on both sides. It was really deserted. And I figured, I don't feel comfortable. The plane's brand new. What if something happens? There's literally nothing around me except a bunch of, small airports with no services. I'll be stuck somewhere in the middle. So I figured, let's go to the, safest route on the Highway 1, which is what I did. I was pretty happy with that.
It's also a prettier route, right?
Yeah, it was actually pretty nice. It was comfortable, and I like going up, so I went like flight level 150, like like it was pretty high, comfortable. It was good. It was fun.
So, was the vision originally to be a combination of a tool and a game, or was the vision originally more like game, and you realized, hey, this could be used as a tool?
I mean, it's like the model that I had was like it's based heavily. Like my inspiration was Flight Unlimited 2 back in like 1997, 98. I loved the way they had the physics, they had the whole design made, and I use it as a training tool. Like for me, it was like a way to keep my head in the game when I wasn't flying, and I never saw it really as a game. We don't have like when you have an F-18, you can't shoot rockets. Like if you want this, go to some other game. We're just about the realism of physics. Like if you fly a 172 heavy loaded at Aspen on a 40-degree Celsius day, you're not taking off. It's going to stay on the ground in ground effect, and then you're going to crash at the end of the runway. We respect the laws of physics, so it's really not an arcade game. So it's really up to the person playing if they want it to be as a game or as a training platform or as a tool. It's really up to them.
I'm going to get into the ATC and a little bit more into the ForeFlight integration in just a minute. But most of my audience, not most, let me correct that. A lot of my audience are either student pilots or prospective student pilots would like to be someday. What would you want them to know about infinite flight?
It's a good question for me to answer because I've newly PPL'd as of a year and a half ago. So Laura and Philippe, our other co-owner, said I'm thinking about doing this, and they said yes, please, we want pilots on the team. And they said while you're at it, figure out objectively what the proper use for you is during training for infinite flight. So I did, and that was in the article that I shared with you. But really for me, so in Canada where I trained, we can't use ForeFlight during our training. It's all paper charts, E6B, paper nav log, everything, paper weight and balance, which I think Laura and I will argue about this, but I think having that foundation is, for me, it was really important because it helped me understand what why I was doing what I was doing. But I'm really bad at math. My 12-year-old son is much better at doing math in his head than I am. He's faster at it. So for me, the perspective of doing math in the cockpit was really daunting, doing calculations and things. Of course, now I use ForeFlight, but I have that foundation because what I would do is I would do my calculations, and then I would launch in a 172 in infinite flight with my paper chart on the floor. Don't tell my instructor, but maybe ForeFlight just to kind of verify what was going on, which was actually nice. And we have real world winds aloft and, like Laura said, density, altitude, and all of that. So I would launch, I would have my VFR checkpoints, and I would say, okay, here's my set heading point. Here's my first checkpoint, which is near, Highway 400 and the train tracks. And I would say, okay, it took me this long, and this is my true airspeed and all of that. And then I could use my E6B and figure out, okay, it took me this long and I did 10 miles, so what's my updated ETA and what's my fuel burn and all of that. So that was the really practical help for me because I flew my actual cross country 3 or 4 times in the sim, and then I went and did it. So my workload and my task saturation felt lower when I was doing it by myself, no instructor. E6B map, fumbling around with that was a little bit less daunting. Yeah.
That's very interesting. I wish I would have had something like that when I was training back in 2008. I was also very analog back then, but that was out of necessity. It was a long time ago.
And the level of couch flying when you've got something that you can literally just pull out of your pocket, or you're probably already using a tablet for your ground school or your EFB or whatever. You've got it already. There's no barrier to entry. You just download the Infinite Flight for free, and you've got it.
Excellent. Okay, let's talk about air traffic control integration really quick. Which one of you would like to give me an overview?
So we have, it's not based on voice, so it's pre-made commands. So you basically start the application if you want to be a pilot, you start the application in live mode, what we call live mode. You select a server experience. So we have 3 different types of servers. One is casual, where you can fly. There's no rules. You can just do whatever you want, and only comms are like a Unicom. So you talk to the CTAF frequency and broadcast your intentions. But it's sometimes a little chaotic because obviously there's people practicing there. Then we have the training server, which is like a hybrid of expert and casual, where you can make some mistakes, but there's automated checks so you can taxi too fast and you don't do inverted flights over an airport. And then and you can also act as a controller, as a practice controller there. And we have the expert server where we have Tyler, who's managing the ATC community. They're basically training to have proper experience at different levels of airports and the size of airports. And they open frequencies, like we have areas that we open every day, like hubs, so people can do flights. There's like themes that we're going to open, like California or like the East Coast, and the controllers are starting the app in a different mode, and they can decide if they want to be approach, departure, tower. They can also set the ATIS, ground. We also have center frequencies as well. And all they do is basically try to manage the flow of aircraft, because we sometimes have a lot of traffic coming in, probably more than real life, because when we have events, we're talking like 500 aircraft leaving or arriving in airport within the hour, maybe less than an hour.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, so that's why what's funny is that we had issues at the beginning. We didn't have SID stars or approaches. We just assumed people would just do it right. But now we have SIDs and stars, so we have, if you're a controller at an airport, you can set the ATIS, you can coordinate with the approach and say, listen, I'm having those runways available. It'd be nice if you could have this star recommended in the ATIS and this one, and then they kind of manage this together when it's very heavy traffic. So it's pretty cool. And the way you interact with the controllers is by using pre-made commands. So it's similar to Flight Unlimited, where you selected, you want to talk to tower, you want to say you want to take off, which runway, what's your departure direction, if you want to do touch and go. So all this is done very easily, like it's all accessible with your thumb. And on the controller side, they have about the same things. They can send those messages, and it's like text to speech. So you don't have to worry about talking or being like, scared of talking to someone.
And you have pretty good coverage when you open up those areas?
Yeah, it's like if you go to the active frequencies for a certain region, there's usually going to be, any time of the day, between 2 to 10 airports open for the tower, and usually a couple of approach frequencies. And the approach are kind of sometimes like, they're going to come on a like use basis. Like when the tower is basically, there's too many people coming in, they're going to they have a Discord, they're going to say, I need an approach at Atlanta because people are coming in like a little disorganized. I need someone to help manage the flow. So they're going to spawn and kind of reorganize everybody so that everybody comes in on the approach properly and there's no like crazy traffic. So there's lots of, if you fly today on live and if you get to that expert server, you need some training like to get it. You're pretty much guaranteed any time of the day to have an approach open, at least multiple towers, so you can have a lot of fun.
Very interesting. I'll have to try that out. So I'm going to ask you in general in a minute, but for air traffic control specifically, are there plans to integrate voice?
So the problem with voice is the community is like very wide, and we notice that if we don't moderate things, people start insulting one another. So it's something we've been thinking about, but also I think it would change our rating in the App Store, because when there's like direct interaction with people, it makes things a little more difficult. So it's something we're thinking about, but no immediate plans for that. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And then just in general, what's up next for the app?
So we have many things in plans, some things that we can talk about, some that are still like kind of, under wraps. We have obviously more planes coming in. We have the F-18 that we have in demo here that we're going to ship in the next month or so. We have the E175 that we're kind of redoing, like since the app is being continuously updated, some of the models that we shipped in 2013, 14, 15 are still there. We still offer access to them, but they're not up to the latest standards. So we're going over all these airplanes and redoing them. So the E175 is the next one with the F-18. And then after that, we have a revamp of the graphics engine that we're working on. Hopefully can have later this year to allow better rendering, better quality. That's gonna, we've seen some screenshots and it looks pretty good so far. So hopefully we can make it work. The difficulty we have compared to like PC sims is that we run on tablets. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we have to, that we either can't do or we have to spend way more time optimizing, especially on devices, like low-end devices on Android, which have issues sometimes running high-performance games. So, and there's other things, but I can't really talk about them right now.
My job is to rip the mic out of your hand if she starts talking about the wrong thing, which she's always building these cool things and wants to share, and we're like, Laura, no, we need to keep that one under wraps. But our scenario system that's actually in play on these iPads right now is something that's actually pretty cool in terms of opening the app up a little more to things like flight schools or training apps and things like that, where they can literally set up. I've been using the word macro. It's like macro is kind of an old school word, but it's sort of a script for where you can, anything we simulate can be a part of this scenario. So and then some. Like we can have on-screen prompts and things like that. So if you want to show, Regan had a good example earlier today where things like tracking to and from VORs is a confusing thing for a lot of new pilots, including
That's true.
Including me still, and thank goodness I don't have to do it very often or ever. But we can set up a scenario where you're literally inbound or outbound on a VOR and showing the pilot what that looks like and how they can change, what happens if you change and what the needle does and all that kind of stuff, change heading and all that.
Yeah, it sounds like a great learning tool. Be able to do it. Anything else that I forgot to ask that I should have asked?
Yes, we have two things. First, you can talk about that after. I just want to mention all our social media stuff, if that's okay. We're on all social media at Infinite Flight. If you're new to Infinite Flight, our YouTube training tutorials are huge. They're a really good learning resource. Our user guide is fairly new still, and it's really comprehensive thanks to all of Regan's hard work. And so that's at infiniteflight.com/guide. Our community forum, if you're into hanging out with other like-minded av geeks and flight simmers, community.infiniteflight.com.
I'm guessing you spend some time there.
Yes, guilty. That's the only reason I work here is due to the community. So, yeah, and in fact, I used to have a podcast that was about Infinite Flight, but now that I'm here, I don't really have time. I don't have time for that. Yeah, so. Get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you, and we hope to have some new student pilots listening in.
All right, one follow-up to that then. Do you have any idea what your mix of users is? Pilots, non-pilots, students?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're the in broad terms, the bell curve of the user is somewhere around 19, 20 years old. Mostly male, but not all. And then we have every end of the spectrum from, very young to very old, to be honest. And and it surprises us sometimes who's using the app. We had Buzz Aldrin using the app at one point and tweeting about it. But it's, in terms of pilots and non-pilots, it's a range. We have real-world airline pilots. We have one on our team, and we have some in our community that prefer to use it to do ATC. And so that's fun for them, and they do it while they're in a hotel room on layover. So there's a range, but part of my job and my goal and my dream is to have more pilots discovering and using Infinite Flight to learn and train and chair fly, and so that's one of the things that I grind away at and talk to people like you to spread the word.
Perfect. And you were going to add something too, I think, Laura.
Just a quick mention of the scenery editor. So all the ground airports and that we have they're made in the app with a team of people that we source from the community. So they're all managing this. We don't even control what the airport they're making. They just took it up on their own, and they're just grinding away at some airports and adding objects and buildings and all that. And it's all inside the app itself. So the app has another mode, a scenery editor, and there's a whole process to apply, and there's a review system, so we don't let anyone just do anything, because obviously, it needs to be realistic. But they've made an amazing, the result is absolutely amazing what they've been doing.
Amazing things happen when you have a good community, right?
So we're trying to empower the community as much as we can, because it's how things like flight sim like Flight Unlimited, they had a hard time building a community because they were pretty close, right? You could add things to it, but it's hard to maintain like the self-sustaining kind of energy. That's why we're like fully on the community and trying to open the sim as much as we can with API, with different apps. Cameron over here joined us because I worked in an API to expose the traffic in Infinite Flight, and he did an app. He coded an app on iOS to show the traffic, like a flight aware for Infinite Flight. And then we're like, hey, you should join us. And then he was still a student, and then after that he worked more with us, and then now he's full time with us. So
that's a great story.
And a lot of the people here, Reagan is the same. He was a user. Obviously, he was the same. Like a lot of people that we have here are sourced from the community, and I think it's a great thing because you have the passion to begin with.
I agree. Without a community, these types of things just die.
Yeah, it's impossible to keep it going.
Well, excellent. Thank you both very much for spending some time with me. And I can't wait to kind of use it a little bit more and check it out. So one last thing I wanted to mention, and I don't know, Jay, if you'd have a comment about it. From my research, it looks like it is free to use, but you unlock a whole bunch of features if you get a subscription. Do you want to talk about that just briefly?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So you can download it for free in the App Store or Google Play, where you just search for Infinite Flight. It's easy to find. You get a handful of regions to fly in, and we tried to spread those out sort of around the world: South Africa, the Los Angeles, that sort of California area, and then a handful of airplanes. And some of the airplanes even are new models that have interactive cockpits and everything. So you get a good selection of things that, and all of the nav data in those regions is included. We have global nav data that we source from NavBlue, and so all of the real-world procedures and all that all comes with the app in those regions. So if you subscribe, then you unlock the whole fleet of airplanes, which come, like I said, we have almost 1,000 livery and airplane combinations. The whole world, global flight in satellite terrain imagery at 15 meter per pixel. And then our multiplayer is the big thing with the ATC.
All right. Thank you very much.
Well, so what did you think? I'd love to hear from you if you're already using Infinite Flight and how it's been working for you. But if you try it because of this episode, I would really dig knowing what you think of it. You can always reach out to me directly via email at bill@studentpilotcast.com or on the contact form at the website, which is studentpilotcast.com. You can also reach out to me on Twitter. My username is @BillWill. That's Bravo India Lima Lima, Whiskey India Lima. I've really been enjoying playing around with Infinite Flight since Jay brought it to my attention, and I'm guessing that you will too. I love that it's so accessible and it's really easy to get going with, and I can definitely see how useful it could be for flight planning purposes as well. Well, that'll do it for this episode. Don't forget to look for my other OSH22 feature content. It's either already published or coming soon. And thanks for watching. Now, go find a way to become a better pilot. See ya.